the ungodly technological advances we've had in the decades since then, we should all be living a much more luxurious life. And of course, in some ways we are. Medical technology has advanced. Obviously, we can have conversations like this over, my home studio, and you can be in your office or home, and we can, but the basics of like essentially all the areas where government hyper regulates and where the government is way too involved, the costs just go through the roof. And I think you make a very good point that for the first time, I think we've seen kind of like a drip 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 and now all at once. But for the first time, you're really looking at the younger generation and going like, whoa, there's really no way, unless you really make it. I mean, if you get to the point where you're making more than $500,000 a year, you're still going to have a real good life in this country. But you almost have to get to that point before you're like, okay, you can now go have what my grandfather had. It's right. Truly tragic.
And the left accuses the right of economic policies that leave people out. But the dynamic you just described, where if you're not making $500,000, like you're having a hard time breaking into the middle class in some places in this country, that's actually what leaves people out. And it is, it's the fuel of capitalism that has allowed us to have the greatest progress in all of human history. But there's an interesting dynamic that's changing, right? Like when I was growing up, the new TV would come out, and then a few months later, it's cheaper, right? I'm used to a dynamic where technology got cheaper. And really the only thing that's getting cheaper now is like data and the transmission of information, like you just talked about. But cars are getting more expensive. Houses are getting way more expensive. You're having a generation now that's not going to get used to things getting cheaper, but indeed more expensive because of the rapid the inflation that occurred. And, there are some who got all the cheap debt when money was free. And in a way, those are some pretty good investments. If you're carrying debt right now that you were able to acquire at 3 or 4%, you look like a genius. But at the same time, that affects quality of life greatly, because a lot of people now, their starter home is their forever home. You're never leaving that starter home, not because you haven't made more money, your family's not growing, but because you cannot change interest rates. And right. It's a cruel thing to do. And it's what robs people of the hope for better, which is actually what drives the type of achievement that lifts people up.